The room was full of people who wanted to be noticed. Expensive watches catching the light at deliberate angles, laughter pitched just loud enough to carry, conversations performed more than exchanged. And in the corner, a man sat alone, nursing a drink he barely touched, watching everything with eyes that gave away nothing. By the end of the night, 3 people had lost their jobs, 2 marriages were functionally over, and a business deal worth $11 million had changed hands. The loud ones never saw it coming. They never do. You clicked on this video because something in you already knows what I'm about to teach you. Maybe you've been in a room with someone who said almost nothing, and yet somehow controlled everything that happened. Maybe you've been underestimated your whole life because you're not the loudest voice, and you're starting to suspect that might actually be your greatest weapon. Or maybe you've been burned by a quiet one before, someone who smiled softly while they dismantled your life piece by piece, and you still don't fully understand how they did it. Whatever brought you here, understand this. The next 20 minutes are going to change how you see every room you ever walk into again. I'm going to show you exactly why silence is the most dangerous sound a human being can make. Let me tell you something that will save you years of confusion. The world trains you to believe that power announces itself. Movies show you the alpha male pounding his chest, the CEO screaming at subordinates, the general barking orders. This is a lie designed to keep you predictable. The people who actually run things, the ones who pull strings you didn't even know existed, they learned a long time ago that visibility is vulnerability. Every word you speak is a piece of ammunition you hand to everyone listening. Think about the last argument you lost. Not the one where you were clearly wrong, but the one where you were right and still somehow ended up on the losing side. I'm willing to bet you talked more than the other person. You explained yourself, you justified, you defended, you elaborated. And with every word you revealed more about what you actually wanted, what you were afraid of, what buttons could be pushed to make you react. Meanwhile, they sat there, maybe nodding occasionally, maybe asking a simple question that somehow put you on your back foot. You were playing chess while announcing every move before you made it. They were watching, learning, waiting. This is the first law of dangerous silence. The person who speaks least controls the frame. A frame is the invisible boundary around any interaction that determines what it means, who has status, and what the rules are. Most people think the loud person sets the frame because they're filling the air with their reality. But here's what they don't understand. When you speak, you're offering a frame. When you stay silent, you're rejecting theirs without giving them anything to push against. It's like trying to punch fog. I want you to picture a job interview. 2 candidates equally qualified. The first one walks in and immediately starts talking, filling every silence with nervous elaboration, laughing at his own jokes, over-explaining his resume. The second one walks in, shakes hands firmly, sits down, and waits. When asked a question, she answers it directly, then stops. The silence after her answers isn't empty, it's full. It's full of the expectation that the interviewer will now work to fill it. Suddenly, the power dynamic has shifted in a way neither party can consciously articulate what both of them feel. The interviewer finds himself trying to impress her, selling the job to her, wanting her approval. She hasn't done anything except refuse to perform. Let me be clear about something before we go further. I'm not teaching you to be a mute. I'm not telling you that silence is always superior or that you should never speak. That would be just as foolish as talking constantly. What I'm teaching you is strategic deployment of presence without projection. There's a massive difference between someone who is quiet because they have nothing to say and someone who is quiet because they're choosing what to say with surgical precision. Everyone can feel that difference even if they can't name it. The first type of quiet person gets ignored. The second type gets watched. Now, let's talk about what the dangerous quiet person is actually doing when they sit in that corner and observe. Because they're not just passively existing. They're running calculations that would make a supercomputer sweat. Every human being and every interaction is constantly leaking information through channels they don't even know they have. The way someone positions their feet tells you where they actually want to go. The direction of their first glance when they enter a room tells you who they're most concerned with impressing or avoiding. The topics they steer toward versus the ones they steer away from tell you where their wounds are. The words they repeat unconsciously tell you what they're trying to convince themselves of. A loud person catches almost none of this because they're too busy transmitting to receive. Their bandwidth is entirely devoted to output, to managing how they're being perceived, to performing their version of status. The quiet observer has all that bandwidth available for intake. While everyone else is playing their character, the quiet one is reading the script, the lighting cues, the stage directions, and the reviews from last night's performance. This is not a fair fight. It was never meant to be. Here's a concrete example that will probably hit close to home. You're at a social gathering, maybe a party, maybe a work event. There's a group of people talking, and you want to enter the conversation. Most people's instinct is to jump in, to say something funny or interesting or relevant to announce their presence. The dangerous quiet person does something different. They position themselves at the edge of the group, close enough to hear, far enough to not be obligated to participate. They listen. They watch who defers to whom, who interrupts whom, who performs for the group versus who performs for one specific person. Within 5 minutes, they know more about the social hierarchy of that group than most members of the group know themselves. When they finally do speak, it's not a random insertion. It's a precision strike. They say exactly the right thing to exactly the right person at exactly the right moment. And suddenly, they're not on the edge of the group anymore. They're at the center of it. Not because they demanded attention, because they earned it. I need to tell you something that most people will never admit. The reason quiet people make others uncomfortable isn't mysterious. It's actually very simple. Human beings have an evolved need to categorize threats and non-threats as quickly as possible. We do this through reading signals. When someone is talking constantly, smiling broadly, gesturing openly, they're essentially saying, "Look, here's all my cards. You can see I'm not a threat. We're all friends here." It's a form of social appeasement that makes others feel safe. When someone is quiet and observant, they're denying you that information. Your primitive brain registers this as danger. Not because they've done anything threatening, but because you don't know what they're capable of. Uncertainty is more terrifying than known hostility. This is why quiet people often get labeled as creepy, stuck-up, intimidating, or weird. These labels are not accurate assessments. They're defensive projections from people who feel exposed by someone who isn't exposing themselves. If you're someone who has been called these things your whole life, I want you to really hear this. You're not broken. You're not socially deficient. You're operating with information advantages that make others instinctively nervous. The question is whether you're going to let their discomfort make you shrink, or whether you're going to learn to weaponize it. Let's go deeper into the psychology of power and how silence operates within it. Robert Greene, in his work on power dynamics, talks about the concept of creating an air of mystery. But most people misunderstand what this means. They think it means being deliberately vague or playing hard to get. That's amateur hour. True mystery isn't about withholding information for its own sake. It's about making people uncertain of your true capabilities, your true intentions, your true limits. When you talk a lot, you define yourself. You draw a box around what you are and what you can do. When you remain strategically silent, you remain undefined. And an undefined threat is always more dangerous than a defined one, because it could be anything. Think about negotiations. The most powerful position in any negotiation is being willing to walk away. But there's a second layer most people miss. The most powerful presentation of that willingness isn't announcing it. It's embodying it through silence. When someone makes an offer and you just look at them without responding, something magical happens. The silence becomes a void they feel compelled to fill. And when people fill silence under pressure, they almost always fill it by improving their offer or revealing information they didn't intend to share. You don't have to say, "That's not good enough." Your silence says it more powerfully than words ever could. I learned this lesson in a way I'll never forget. Years ago, I was in a meeting with someone who had more power than me by every conventional measure. More money, more connections, more experience, more social proof. And I made the mistake of talking. I explained my position. I justified my reasoning. I built elaborate arguments for why what I was asking for was fair. He listened. He nodded occasionally. And when I finished my beautifully constructed case, he just looked at me for about 5 seconds without saying anything. In those 5 seconds, everything I had said suddenly sounded desperate. I felt exposed, like I had shown up to a gunfight with a detailed diagram of why guns are dangerous. Then he named a number that was about 40% of what I had asked for, and I took it. I took it because somewhere in that silence I had convinced myself that I was lucky to get anything at all. He never argued with me. He never told me I was wrong. He just waited until I argued with myself. That's when I understood. Speech is defense. Silence is offense. When you talk, you're trying to protect something, to explain, to justify, to convince. When you're truly silent, you're attacking, you're destabilizing, you're forcing the other person to contend with the vacuum you've created. Most people can't handle it. They'll fill that vacuum with concessions just to escape the discomfort. Now I want to talk about something more subtle. The quiet person isn't just dangerous because of what they don't say. They're dangerous because of what they notice that no one else does. Every group has an invisible architecture. There's the official hierarchy that everyone acknowledges. And then there's the real hierarchy that operates underneath it. The loud ones usually only see the official version. The quiet ones see both. Here's what I mean. In any organization, any friend group, any family, there's someone who holds formal authority and someone who holds actual influence. These are often not the same person. The CEO might make announcements, but the executive assistant controls access. The patriarch might sit at the head of the table, but everyone watches the matriarch's face to know how to react. The team leader might assign tasks, but the senior developer actually determines what gets done. Quiet people see these real structures because they're not distracted by the performance of the official ones. And once you see the real structure, you can navigate it. You can align with the actual centers of power instead of wasting energy on the figureheads. Let me give you a practical application. You start a new job. Most people spend their first few weeks trying to impress their direct manager, the official authority. The dangerous quiet person spends those weeks watching. Who does the manager ask for input before making decisions? Who do people go to when there's a real problem that needs fixing? Whose mood affects the whole team's energy? Who knows where everything is, both literally and figuratively? By the end of month 1, the quiet person has mapped the real org chart. They know that Linda in accounting actually determines who gets budget approvals, that Marcus, the facilities guy, is best friends with the VP, that the manager is terrified of Sarah and HR for reasons nobody talks about. Now they can operate, not through the official channels that everyone else is fighting over, but through the shadow channels that actually move things. This brings me to something crucial about dangerous silence. It's not passive. It's actively acquisitive. The quiet person is constantly gathering something that the loud person is constantly spending: information. Information about people's weaknesses, their desires, their fears, their relationships, their pressure points, their histories, their ambitions. Every piece of information is a tool that can be used later. Not necessarily maliciously, but strategically. When you know what someone really wants, you can offer it. When you know what they fear, you can protect them from it or threaten to expose them to it. When you know who they're connected to, you can approach those connections yourself or leverage the relationship. Knowledge isn't just power. Knowledge is options. And options are freedom. Here's something that might disturb you, but you need to hear it. The quiet person who has been observing you for months knows things about you that you don't consciously know about yourself. They've seen your patterns, your tells, your defense mechanisms, your blind spots. They've watched you when you thought no one was watching. They've noticed which compliments make your face light up and which criticisms make you shut down. They know your recurring words, your nervous habits, your attraction patterns, your coping behaviors. If they wanted to manipulate you, they could. Not through crude force, but through invisible influence that you would never detect. You would think you were making your own decisions while actually following a script they wrote. This is the true power of dangerous silence. It's not the ability to intimidate. It's the ability to predict. Now let me flip this around and talk about you. Because everything I've described, you can learn. You can become the dangerous quiet person in the room. But I need to be honest about what that actually requires. It's not just about talking less. That's the surface behavior. It's about fundamentally changing your relationship to attention. Most people are addicted to being seen. Social media has turned this into an epidemic, but the impulse is ancient. We want to be witnessed, validated, acknowledged. We talk because silence feels like invisibility, and invisibility feels like death. The dangerous quiet person has killed that need within themselves. Not suppressed it, killed it. They don't need you to see them. They don't need you to know how smart they are, how funny they are, how important they are. They've found a source of validation that doesn't require external confirmation. This is rare. This is powerful. And this is exactly what makes their silence so potent. Because here's what happens when you truly don't need external validation. You become unpredictable to everyone who does. 95% of human behavior is driven by the desire for approval or the fear of rejection. When you've genuinely transcended that, you're operating on a different game board than everyone around you. They can't read you because their frameworks don't apply to you. They can't manipulate you because the levers they're used to pulling aren't connected to anything. They can't predict you because your actions aren't driven by the same needs theirs are. I want to tell you how this actually looks in practice because it's not as cold as it sounds. The dangerous quiet person still has relationships, still has connections, still has warmth. But these things are choices, not needs. They connect with people because they genuinely want to, not because they're terrified of being alone. They share information because it serves a purpose, not because they can't bear to have a thought unwitnessed. They speak when speaking creates value, not just to fill silence with sound. The paradox is that this actually makes them better friends, better partners, better colleagues, because you always know that their presence is a choice. Their attention is a gift. Their words mean something because they're not thrown around carelessly. Let me talk about the dark side for a moment, because I'm not going to pretend it doesn't exist. The capacity for dangerous silence can be used for destruction just as easily as construction. History is full of quiet manipulators who use their observational power to exploit, to con, to abuse. They mapped people's vulnerabilities and used that map to strip mine them emotionally, financially, socially. If you've ever been targeted by someone like this, you know how disorienting it is. They seemed to understand you completely. They said exactly what you needed to hear. They became indispensable, and then they revealed themselves as something else entirely. This is the shadow side of what I'm teaching you, and I need you to understand it for two reasons. First, so you can recognize it when someone is doing it to you. The defense against a dangerous, quiet person is knowing their methods. When someone seems to understand you too perfectly, too quickly, that's not chemistry. That's reconnaissance. When someone gives you exactly what you need without you asking for it, question how they knew to give it. When someone makes you feel like the most important person in the world while revealing almost nothing about themselves, you're not being loved. You're being studied. Second, so you can make a conscious choice about how you'll use this power, because I can't make that choice for you. I can give you the tools, but I can't determine what you'll build with them. There are people watching this video right now who will use what I'm teaching to become better leaders, better partners, better protectors of the people they care about. There are others who will use it to exploit and dominate. That decision is yours, and you'll live with the consequences either way. Now let's talk about developing this capacity if it doesn't come naturally to you. Because for some of you, this is already your default mode, and you just needed permission to stop fighting it. For others, you're talkers by nature, and the idea of strategic silence feels alien. Here's the truth. Anyone can develop this. It's not a personality trait. It's a skill. Start with observation exercises. Go to a coffee shop and watch people for 30 minutes without looking at your phone. See how much you can learn about each person just from watching. Are they waiting for someone? Are they pretending to be busy? Are they actually working or just performing work? What does their posture say about their emotional state? What does their clothing choice say about who they want to be perceived as? At first, this will feel awkward, and you won't notice much. After a few weeks, you'll be astounded at how much information is available that you've been ignoring your whole life. Next, practice silence in conversation. This is harder than it sounds because every fiber of your being will want to fill gaps. Start small. When someone finishes speaking, count 2 full seconds before you respond. That's it. 2 seconds. Notice how those 2 seconds change the texture of the conversation. Notice how the other person often continues talking, giving you more information, sometimes more than they intended to share. Notice how your response, when it does come, is more measured and more impactful. The third practice is eliminating unnecessary speech. Not all speech, unnecessary speech. Pay attention to how much of your talking is filler, agreement noises that add nothing, stories told solely so you can participate, questions asked not because you want to know the answer, but because you want to show you're engaged. Opinions offered not because they matter, but because silence feels uncomfortable. Start cutting these. You'll feel anxious at first. You'll worry people think you're disengaged or unfriendly, but watch what actually happens. People start listening more carefully when you do speak. Your words carry more weight because they're rare. Your presence becomes more powerful because it's not diluted by noise. The final practice, and this is the hard one, is sitting with your need for validation without feeding it. When you feel the urge to share something because you want praise, don't share it. When you feel the urge to explain yourself because you want understanding, don't explain. When you feel the urge to announce an accomplishment because you want recognition, stay quiet. This will be deeply uncomfortable. That discomfort is the feeling of your addiction withdrawing. Sit with it. Let it pass. Each time you do, you get a little freer. And freedom from the need for validation is the foundation upon which dangerous silence is built. I want to tell you one more story before we finish. There was a man I knew who ran a network of people in a major city. Not a formal organization, just an informal web of connections across industries, backgrounds, social classes. If something needed to get done, he knew who could do it. If someone needed an introduction, he was the conduit. He had more soft power in that city than most politicians, and almost no one knew his name. I asked him once how he built this network. He thought about it for a while, and then he said something I've never forgotten. He said that everyone wants to be known, but nobody wants to be seen. He explained that they want the credit, the recognition, the validation, but they don't want someone to actually perceive them, to understand what they really are underneath the performance. He told me he offered the opposite. He saw them, really saw them, but he didn't need to be known. So they trusted him with things they wouldn't trust anyone else with. And that trust became his network. That's what I'm teaching you. The dangerous quiet person isn't dangerous because they can hurt you, though they can. They're dangerous because they see you in a way that most people are too distracted, too self-absorbed, or too chattering to ever see anyone. In a world full of noise, the one who truly listens holds all the cards. So here's my challenge to you. Tomorrow, wherever you go, talk 30% less than usual. Don't announce this goal to anyone. Don't explain why you're quieter. Just observe more and vocalize less. Watch what happens. Watch how people respond to you differently. Watch how much more you notice. Watch how the room rearranges itself slightly in response to your silence. And then ask yourself, why did I ever give this power away for free? The loud ones will keep performing. Let them. They're putting on a show for an audience that isn't paying attention. You're going to sit in the corner, drink barely touched, eyes revealing nothing. And by the end of the night, you'll understand why dangerous things don't need to make noise. The quiet one sees everything. Now you know why that's the most dangerous thing of all.